Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to part 3 of Day and Night Daily number 356, where, we learn to be a better gamer. Woo! That Chipotle almost came right on up in part number 3, but fortunately we managed to dodge. Let's pop back into the game, where we see this nice little control build by Elfie. And he ends up in this nice little spot where he has the beginnings of the exact army composition that he wants. A nice Stalker Colossus army. He has 3 bases up. He has a good amount of probes. He's up at 59. Was actually halting on the probe production for a brief period. But weirdly, Idra is only starting his 4th at the 17-minute mark. And this is an effect of all the early pressure that can sometimes be very, very hard to perceive if you are trying a strategy out for the first time ever. If you're trying the strategy out for the first time ever, you'll end up doing something like, well, I did my Zealot pressure and it kind of worked, and my Phoenix Zealot follow-up it didn't really work, so I don't know, I don't really like the build at all. And then you go back to standard play. But in the standards, this 4th comes up way earlier, generally around 12 to 14 minutes, and now it's at 17 freaking minutes. Or generally Zerg is taking his 4th when Protoss is still struggling to establish his own 3rd. Rarely does Protoss get up his 3rd really calmly and easily, and the Zerg is struggling to get up to 4. But with this nice solid control build, everything's looking quite good. And as we can see, Idra is kind of even with Elfie in terms of supply. Idra's still playing very boss-like, has his macro hatches and is doing all sorts of goody-goodness with it. But now there's this really awkward, gross situation where the Zerg kind of wants to push, kind of wants to do damage. Zerg's aware of the behindedness of this moment. But this army is just so good and so strong that he can't really engage. And of course we have a few lifts on a couple of key units, but be careful. Hydras are good. With this Phoenix count so high, we're also forcing our Zergy buddy to have more Hydras than he really wants to, which of course makes our Colossi way good. Again, in a typical game, what you're saying is, my opponent will have the ideal mix of Roaches, Hydras, and Corruptors, so I better have a correspondingly ideal mix of tons of upgrades and a lot of Colossi and a lot of Stalkers. But here, Elfie's actually saying, well, no, I'm building these Phoenixes. I'm kind of controlling your composition to be in a smaller box. And I think the most extreme version of this is Xerax, who is a Bulgarian player, who in the Team Liquid Star League long ago pretty much would open 2 Stargate Phoenix and transition straight into Colossus. Like, he'd go 2 Stargate Phoenix and then a Robo for Colossus, and then would just go Void Ray Colossus with 2 gates. I mean 2 gateways and like 2 Stargates. It was this weird, kind of hugely skewed build that really tried to force your opponent to have a lot of Hydralisks. And if you try to get a lot of Mutas and Corruptors, then yeah, you had a lot of Phoenixes and Void Rays. But I mean, backing off from that slightly and just going 2 Stargate Phoenix and trying to get good control up, now suddenly the Phoenix Harass has died down a bit. Its potency is waned. Zerg now has a little bit more freedom, but you know what? Elfie just has a lot of stuff. He really should be getting his +2 earlier. His Blink should be, you know, getting Chrono Boosted a little harder. Other obvious ways to improve, but oh yeah, the Warp Prism Harass popping up. And it's kind of funny because I talk all the time about basic mid-games. What's your basic mid-game goal? And you can say something like Stalker Colossus with Warp Prism drops. And great, we've arrived there. But what made this so brilliant was the opening. The opening and all those pressureful transitions I thought were really, really kick-ass. And Elfie's done a lot of that kind of consistently. He won both games against Greg on this map at IEM. Eventually losing in the finals, but still, a lot of really good stuff. And hey, simple warping pressure. Nothing fancy past this point. A couple of Hydralisk drops. Idra trying to do a little bit of damage, but really, really, really cool play by Elfie as we just kind of let this finish up. The Warp Prism Harass will kind of come in and be useful. I think that this is a reasonable attempt from Idra to kind of try to spring into action up here. with some drops. Some workers do get killed off. Idra actually way leading the charge on the workers killed count. But comically enough, the standard reason why Roach Hydralisk Corruptor was abandoned, why that mixture was abandoned, was because once you got maxed, a Stalker Colossus Ball was too hard to deal with. And then Zergs got so damn good at macroing that they would just constantly shut down this third base, and you'd never really have a big Stalker Colossus Ball. And that's what we saw at the recent MLG with Koka and Dongray Du really crushing Protosses with just Roach Hydra Corruptor. And now we have bought ourselves enough time with all of these seemingly circuitous attack patterns where we go way hard into Zealots and then way into Phoenixes and way back into Zealots. And Elfie doing the simplest thing ever, attacking one direction, harassing at the other. And in the final engagement, Idra with a maxed army even has the Corruptors up. One Guardian Shield, one Force Field. Dead expansion up top. War Prison's really showing a lot of use, and Elfie crushes. Really cool. So to recap, really funky opening with this aggression at the start, with the 2 gateways. Allowed us to be in amazing situation to get 2 Stargates worth of Phoenixes. Forced our opponent to make way too many Hydralisks, which we exploited by picking off the Hydralisks one at a time out in the middle of the map. I don't even need to move that much to start seeing the number of Hydralisks that get picked off in the center. Bought us enough time to do this huge Zealot push through mid. And of course, while all this was going on, we eventually meandered our way back to this nice mix. One of the big themes, I think, of control builds is this getting away with taking an expansion when you technically shouldn't be able to in other builds. And I think that if you're trying to go for a big aggressive control-based build, take expansions kind of boldly. I think that is a big theme. Because when Idra gets here and sees this, you just can't really do anything about it. And we saw once in the mid-game, Idra try to do a little bit of push with the Roach Hydra, or just with some Roaches, and it got punished really hard by not a big force, but kind of a cute force. Enough Zealots, enough Stalkers, and plenty of Phoenixes in the air. So let's go ahead and take some questions. Alright, I refresh. Now, as these questions are loading up, let me note that I think it's great to try to do this sort of thing with other races. I think with Zerg it might be a little bit harder to do that. I'm trying to think of some good methods for that. I think that one of the best control style plays that I saw Chef do at the Red Bull LAN is he was playing a game against, was it Bomber? I think it may have been Bomber or Kawhi Rice is who it was. Kawhi Rice was on dual site. So it was a double Hellion opening from Terran. So what the Zerg did is opened up with a Roach Warren and got out 8 Roaches like at a perfect time on 2 bases. And while this was moving out, built a 3rd hatch at another expansion and a 4th hatch in the main. So right when Kawhi Rice was finally comfortable defending everything and he was done holding it off, he had Marauders and Bunkers up, perfect defense against the Roaches. He, I think, was starting to get a Siege Tank up to be able to help with the defense a little bit, but had no real way to shove back and to pick off those expansions. General Mutalisk play, like really fast 2-base Mutalisk. Really kind of standard-ish control build. Put on a lot of pressure with air. He has to make too much anti-air. And then his anti-ground is not nearly as good. And that's where you win. Unless he builds Marines, because they're good against everything. Terran has some really interesting control styles that involve a lot of Banshees. A lot of just general aggression. But I think that the biggest theme of all is that there are these fixed in space buckets of time of where you should do this or should do that. Oh yeah, early expand, and then you should get your cybernetics core as fast as possible, and then you should be trying to put on pressure with either a Stargate or Blink or Robo. You know, it's just like you must do this and you must do this, and trying to back up and say, well, wait a minute. Isn't there enough space to do something else in here? Like, let's take Terran vs. Protoss, for example. I'm going to early expand, I'm going to sit here and defend and get 3 racks, and I'm only going to move out when that first medevac comes out. Cool, sweet. Well, wait a minute. Why can't I do something like a 4 or 5 barracks aggression before I do the medevac? If he does a certain opening. Well, has anyone done that? Yeah, EG's DeMuslim does that quite a bit in Terran vs. Protoss. Now that Protosses have all this other stuff that they need to worry about, they're like the 1-1-1, they're having to worry about regular pushes through the middle. They're having to worry about all that air stuff. There's a variety of playstyles that were abandoned in early beta and early StarCraft 2 early StarCraft 2 release that are now coming back, like the huge pushes, taking thirds really boldly. I especially another great control build is Empire Happy. Has a great fast Banshee right into Stim with a Raven, and he just has a really small amount of units, but he can expand really rapidly as a result. Let's see here. Let us see here. Chris Nilsson says, Dear Day 9, would Idra have been better off going Mass Roach and Spores to negate the Phoenix Zealot combo? Now there's a really interesting point that it becomes pretty difficult to do big pushes. If he just keeps all his roaches back behind the spore crawlers, and then no matter what, your zealots can't quite get into a good position. But think about the flexibility that you have if you see that. Let's say you're moving out with phoenixes and you see a guy like making only roaches to defend that. You don't have to build a whole bunch of zealots and move in there for the kill at all. You can build a few zealots and try to peel the roaches out into the open and still kill them off with the phoenixes. I mean, if you think about one lift killing off a Hydralisk, that being equivalent to one lift killing off a roach, but maybe a little bit more slowly, suddenly your warp prisms are going to be a lot stronger. Like a lot stronger. Suddenly, you can do something like get up a lot more Colossus a lot earlier and sort of exploit your ability to wander up and down those high grounds. You have that freedom to do that sort of thing. Because you do have the vision. I think that might become a little more popular over time. You're still going to have problems where they just suicide in and kill off a ton of your overlords. You have to keep it like really packed. So in a sense, if you are going for roaches, you're going to have to sacrifice way more vision, and that's probably what I would end up exploiting if I were in Elfie's spot. Oh yeah, PGA Joker saying, Dear Day 9, Kiwikaki does his build with 6 Chrono Boosted Void Rays and goes and kills a Zerg with Zealot support. What do you think about that? Yeah, another really great example where you make a bunch of Phoenixes, your opponent makes a bunch of Roaches, and you see it and you go, alright, well I'm going to make 4 Void Rays really fast, and I'm just going to rally them to that one base that's the third, and I'm just going to kill it off. I mean, actually, what really could a Zerg do if he was over-roaching at that point, and you just immediately Chrono Boosted out 4 Void Rays? That would actually be quite difficult to stop, even without Zealot support. That would be kind of hard to deal with. Ooh, that gets me excited. Yeah. And again, it's this idea of sort of like controlling the flow of games, and what you'll kind of feel if you have that old logic that I talked about at the start, where it's like, let me defend, and once I'm defended, I'll deal with you. You have a build that it's like very tight, and little bubbles will appear in it. You know, like, ooh, I'm going to be going for a big Stalker Colossus ball. Okay, well, if he does that, maybe let me get a few Stalkers first, or let me get a few Colossus first, but it stays pretty tight. When you do control builds, you have a lot of, like, this, you're taking directions like you're one of those Tron racers, where you, like, on a dime, are going in a different direction, and you can do that because you see which way you can shuffle him down to, and you just exploit that. Let's see. Let me go through this. So here is a question from Cinemonster. We're going to take this. We're going to take one more question. Cinemonster says, Dear Day 9, do you think Elfie made too many Phoenix and instead should have used those minerals to get Colossi earlier, or even High Templar? Would High Templar have been even better in this situation with Corruptors out? I'm actually going to just answer the first one of that. Do you think he made too many Phoenixes and should have instead gone for Colossi and Templar? I strongly encourage you to go over the top when you are experimenting with trying to be more in control. It's so easy to do the following. I envision my stable mid-game, Stalkers and Colossi. Or actually, you know, let me do the most standard mid-game ever. Marine, Tank, Medevac. Let's describe this build with no control attempts. No harass, no nothing. Early expand, get a bunch of barracks, tech up to tanks and medevacs, and start pushing out as you take a third, getting a lot of upgrades, getting more barracks, getting more tanks and medevacs, right? You're straight barrel down the front style that Bomber does a lot, right? And let's say that you've only done that, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to step into the realm of trying some more control stuff. You always hear me say that whatever harassment you have to do, you have to justify. And it's so important that you come back to your center core, which I do firmly believe in. But a lot of times what can happen is that in terms of your learning, you dabble in some harassment. And if it doesn't work great, then okay, now I'm just back in center. Let me try building 2 Reapers. No, I don't like that as much. I'm not going to really build any Reapers. Okay, well, let me try Banshee. Let me build 1 Banshee. No, I didn't feel good. Let me come back to center. In your experimentation, I encourage you to do something like 2 Reapers didn't work. Let me try 6 Reapers. Really veer off hard in a direction. Because this question about did he make too many Phoenixes, I actually think it worked because he made so many Phoenixes. And overdoing it forces a response. Underdoing it will have kind of a response. Like if you build like 3 Phoenixes and then stop, he's going to build like 5 Hydras and be safe. And that is not what you want. You want him to build 5 Hydras, and then you kill it off, and he goes, shit, and then builds 20 Hydras. Now you're controlling game flow. So again, you always need to come back to this nice little core, but I'm going to encourage you to just go and, like, whenever a harass tactic doesn't work, overdo it more. Overdo it. Really commit. Let's take last question. M4 Destro says, Dear Day 9, could Idra go with a Ling Hydra mix with quick upgrades or do Roach Infester and use Fungal? Again, one of the reasons why we really like that Zealot push at the start is that it helps set up our Phoenixes to be pretty damn good if our opponent does go for Fungal Growths. Like, quite good, because he just does not have that much long-termedness set up. He's low on drones, like he was even with us. And the big thing is that he just can't suddenly get all 6 geysers up at once. Meanwhile, our Stargates are already kind of done and have begun producing. Let's actually take a look at this. At the 8-minute mark, this is when Idra started his lair. Let's look at his gas count throughout here. We see the 2 Stargates finishing up. So then right around now, we're going to see this bad boy finish up. Boom. And how long does it take to build an infestation pit? Well, it takes 50 seconds. And Pathogen Gland, I think, is 110 seconds. Or maybe 140. No, it's 120 seconds, I want to say. Actually, how long is an infester? It's 50 seconds. Am I saying that right? Maybe it's 110? I'm going to have to check when Idra does build that. But we're already going to have some Phoenixes out on the map dealing a good amount of damage. We're already getting close to being able to get a bunch of our gateways up and ready and done. So I actually think that, yeah, Infestors in that direct interaction sense can be pretty darn good against the Phoenixes once they're up. But I still think that we're going to be able to do enough damage. Or at the very least, poke in here. See the Infestors are about to pop out. And then do the good old retreataroo. I actually want to see, did he ever build an infestation pit in this game? I actually am really curious to know when. You know, I don't even know why I'm asking. I can actually just ask the chat. How long is it, boys? It's 80 seconds. 80 seconds. Alright, yeah, 80 seconds. So it's 50 seconds and then 80 seconds to have it out. So maybe, yeah, you could have a few infestors out, but I'd still want to relook at what the gas situation was like. How many could he end up getting? Let's go ahead and briefly do that. This is sort of stuff I do all the time. Theory crafting is great, but make sure you actually double check, because it's really easy to make a statement and to have no clue if it's actually accurate or not. 8 minutes, okay, and then we're going to speed it up. His gas count is really low, and when this finishes, he could probably get up. It's close, because he doesn't have these geysers up, and I can envision them being up, and him getting enough gas income to make, like, a good chunk of infestors. Like, maybe, let's say, 6 infestors. Seems pretty good, right? 6 infestors is going to be about 1,000 gas. I can envision him doing that. But he'd end up cutting a lot of minerals early on. And just getting some infestors up can be decent against Phoenixes until they split them up. And then you kind of need the Hydralisks there as well. And now our Zealots are really strong because he spent so much on just Hydra Infestor against our Phoenixes. Yeah, I mean, the real problem I have with going for air is that if I go Void Ray Phoenix, he can really shut it down hard with some fungal growths, because I'm not really going to have much else. But yeah, that's the end of my logical train of thought. I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's daily, and on Sunday's daily. And I'm not going to be at IPL 3, but I'll definitely be watching it, so I hope you do too. And that's it. That's it. Submit the Fun Day Monday reps. You're all beautiful. Next week, I'll be at MLG. I hope to see you there. And you're all so beautiful. And now I want to go build air units. You know it, baby, baby, baby. Air units incoming. Incoming.